Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast. A live-action film based on the popular game series Helldivers is in the works at Sony, and of course Sony has the game rights to them and stuff. You got Justin Lin, who's directed some of the Fast and Furious films, along with many other things, is going to direct, along with Gary Doberman, who wrote Annabelle, is going to write the script for it. Now, this is a game series that could be really fun as a film. Like, if you haven't ever played, especially the second one, Helldivers 2 really gave a big boost to the series. It is a very tongue-in-cheek, spreading democracy across the galaxy, very much inspired by the Starship Troopers film. Not as much with the book. You can get a little bit of the book, but the book is much different than the film. The film got that definitely government propaganda, over the top, tongue in cheek, and if we don't see a salute happen in that movie, like something is wrong in it. But this could be really fun if they get the humor mixed with the action, right? Like, it's gotta be sarcastic, it's gotta be poking fun at the government and the military and the dedication and everything they try to say. Like, there's plenty of lore in Helldivers 2, but the main thing you got to focus on is give us good, fun, over-the-top action, because you've got atomic bombs being strapped to people's backs and blown up, and you get that over-the-top action with that just Starship Troopers-like humor, and it could be a really big hit.
Yeah, it's got the potential for that. The games are an absolute blast. I love playing Helldivers. That's a fun game. I haven't played it in a minute, but it's one of those that you definitely have a certain aesthetic to the game and the thing, and you got to incorporate all the different enemies you have to fight in that game, which are very much Starship Trooper-esque bugs. And you've got the robots, and you've got
kind of like Terminator-like robots.
And so you got inspiration you could draw from several things that you could really have a lot of fun and kind of poke around with. Justin Lin's a pretty decent director, given his track record of Fast and Furious films, so he knows how to make these kind of over the top, not taking itself too seriously, kind of action style films. But getting Justin Lin in this is not without its own controversies, because he's admitted he's not a gamer by any means, and he's never played the series. So there's naturally some concern that comes with that, where you don't really need to. But I kind of think it might help not having been too deep into the lore to kind of take the reins on it and have a little bit of fun with it and not take it super seriously, which is what I'm hoping is the case here. But there's definitely some concern about him not really knowing the lore of the movies. But when you're dealing with directors, how much into video game lore are you expecting these guys to be if you want to sacrifice that for a quality of film that you might wind up getting? I don't know. That's a different discussion for a different time.
Yeah, this is one where I feel like you may not have to be a video game player, because it is such a, you're dropping in, you're doing missions, and there is lore that happens with the major orders and everything else going around. But like I said, there's key things, just over-the-top action and that government propaganda humor that you've got to nail. And as long as you know those two things, I think they can do well. I don't think the story as is important with something like this. You still need to kind of do it right, because you are dealing with different enemy groups. You've got, as you said, you've got the robot type of enemies, you've got the insect type of enemies, and then you have those kind of more ethereal type of enemies that you have, because like you said, we said there's Star Wars influences and Destiny, the long game running game series. There's so many different inspirations they have that it almost becomes like too big of a mess if you try to look into all the different parodies and things that it kind of touches at. So you just kind of get that core. Like, you got to drop down in the pods, you've got to call stuff in, like you have mechs you can do, you have over the top explosions and everything else that can be done. It needs to be high, insane, over the top action with that just gritty, tongue-in-cheek political humor, and they're going to have a winner. So I think this one may not be as important that the director is not that familiar with playing the game. You still want them to kind of make sure they get it right. But hopefully you got the studio and others that are really giving them the tips and the pointers, especially, going to the writer and the director and making sure, hey, this is what we try to accomplish. This is what we tried to do with the story. This is how this and that and everything else is. And you should have a fun film out of it.
I can imagine they'll do their research a little bit. I mean, you're signing on to make a project like this. You you don't go into things thinking I'm going to make a piece of trash film. You know, like they're gonna do the research, but we'll see. You definitely have to have your for democracy moments in there, and like that tongue in cheek stuff that you're saying to make that film successful and as true to a video game as you can. I mean, you can take some inspiration for some recent successful properties that have done that. I think making it in kind of a Fallout-esque style as well could be fun, like as well as Fallout has done. I know we're coming up on season 2 of that eventually that I'm really excited for. But yeah, making it something along those lines, looking to that, even something like that for inspiration would probably work wonders for this. And you got to imagine it's going to be a violent, crazy, over the top, hopefully rated R film that you can.
It should be, yeah.
As crazy as the game is, it's going to kind of have to be. So we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, the rated R rating is so weird because if it's creatures and you don't give them red blood, then they can get away with a lot more over the top violence without going rated R. They could be PG-13, but because they're killing robots and insects, I mean, you're gonna have to have plenty of disposable soldiers that get killed in there and stuff. But it depends if they limit the amount of blood you see from that. But I have a feeling they probably got to go a pretty hard R with this to get the over the top. Because I mean, just look at the opening cinematic to Helldivers 2, where this guy is just talking and then his family gets brutally murdered by a bug. Like, it doesn't shy away from the violence. So, I mean, there's two different ways it could go with it. Like you said, if they try to limit showing the amount of blood, because you're very heavily armored. But if you've played any match, you come back to the screen to tell you what you did, and my character has just been drenched from head to toe in red blood and like can barely even see the colors of my armor. So they could try to limit it, but it definitely feels like they need to go rated R with this.
They definitely have to go in on all that to be successful for sure. But I want to move us into our next story now, and we're both big, avid fans of the show The Bear. The Bear is absolutely brilliant. Go back in our archives and see what we thought of the most recent season, but it's been revealed by Jeremy Allen White now that Season 5 is going to start filming in January, which is great news. And there may not be solid plans yet set in stone for anything beyond Season 5, but he wasn't really willing to dive in and say this is going to be the definitive last season. Now, obviously, we need some follow-up on the way they left things at the end of Season 4, so happy for Season 5. Happy that they're filming it and happy that it's coming probably, I would assume, in 2027 if they're filming in 2026, but you never know because they can turn it around very quick. They can turn it around very quickly, so hopefully we get it significantly sooner, but you see where everything else goes. It can film 1 year and come out 2 years later, or in some Marvel properties cases, like 3, 4, 5 years later. We're looking at you, Ironheart. But like we could hopefully get it sooner than later. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see where they take this story, and I'm glad they're finally diving back into it and revisiting it because the show is just absolutely fantastic, and I'm excited that we're getting another follow-on season.
Yeah, I think the plan still is for like a June or July release of next year. It doesn't take like too terribly long to edit and do. So they're able to film in like January, February and get it out for maybe a late summer, maybe if it takes a little bit longer than that. But we don't know how many episodes it's going to be. We don't know. And if this does end up being the final season, does it need a little bit more time to do stuff? And it has felt like it's moving towards the end, especially with what happened in Season 4. You had a lot of drama, a lot of shifting, and a lot of things happening here. Like, it definitely feels like it's going towards that, and you don't want it to stick around too long and overstay its welcome and just kind of end up being bad. Like, it was, my wife finally started watching The Bear, and I actually sat in and watched the wedding episode from Season 4 with her, because once they started going under that table, I just started giggling, and my wife's like, what are you, just wait for the world's longest wedding table that can fit so many people underneath it. But yeah, it's been such a solid and great series. I'm going to be sad to see it go.
Sure, for sure.
But it definitely set up that it's heading towards the end. And he even said that Season 4 was originally going to be the end of it until it was like Christmas Eve last year that he got called up and said, hey, we're doing another season. So we're not quite to Christmas yet. We're getting close. So if they stick to that standard, they'll probably know in late December here if what they're about to film in January is going to be it or not.
Yeah, it does seem like it's reaching its natural conclusion for this story because you have the very uncertain financial future of The Bear at, the restaurant. Like, what's coming up, because obviously when you get to the end of the season, the clock strikes 0 and you wonder what's coming next, right? So you have to imagine there's going to be some kind of definitive end to this at some point. You would feel naturally, the way they've been telling the story, that season 5 would be the way to do it. I'm also in the same boat with you, where I don't want it to drag itself out too long, where you try to get a little too greedy and go maybe an extra season too long, and then you get what could potentially be 2 back-to-back subpar seasons that kind of drag out a story longer than it needs to, just because you want to make a little extra money. But I feel like this 5th season should be the natural wrap-up to the way the story's progressing. I'm personally hoping that's the case, just from a quality storytelling standpoint. As popular as it is, it wouldn't surprise me to try to see them stretch it out, but hopefully they don't. Hopefully they follow that natural progression, and the show can end the way it needs to, in my opinion, to have a really solid end and be the best version of this total story, because up to now it's been just brilliant and fantastic and well done. The actors are all incredible. The writing's amazing, and I'm really hoping that they put their foot down and say, hey, this is it. We're done with this. We're not going beyond this, because this is where the story has to end, and I would be so happy if that's the case.
And we've talked about it before, that season like 5, 6, 7, in that range of a lot of TV shows is kind of where they either wrap it up in a good way or it jumps the shark, that they kind of built to a conclusion, but then the studio's not ready to be done with it and the showrunners aren't ready to be done with it, so it gets stretched 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more seasons or something like that, or 3 or 4. But it's that 5 through 7 season that really kind of makes or breaks a lot of series that have been long running, because you get to that point, like you feel like you've done everything, and that's when you have big shifts in tone, or you have big shifts in story, where a lot of things can go downhill. So it's
Correct.
You're still building really well. Yeah, if that's it, where we left season 4, season 5 feels natural to be the end. Like, I love it. It's been a fantastic show. I'm glad. I think I caught onto it around season 2.
Yeah.
And then introduced you to it and everything else. But it's been such a fantastic show. And rightfully so. You have so many of the actors in here have really started upping their film careers out of it. So you've also got that aspect of it, is that they're all going off and doing so many other big things. You've got one of them join the MCU. Jeremy Allen White has a small Star Wars role coming up in Mandalorian Grogu. So, and just have so many of them are just exploding on the scene right now. It's natural for that too, as we saw with Steve Carell with The Office. It comes to a point like, all right, my movie career is skyrocketing, take it off. It's time to go. End it all at one time, instead of having someone exit and then try to leave. That's my biggest worry, which so far they haven't shown that they're going to do something that just doesn't feel right, is that they keep it going, but you're going to lose maybe half your cast because they decided to take it in a new direction.
Definitely don't want it to end like that. That's not the best way for this show to end. Needs to end definitively. Follow the Breaking Bad example. 5 seasons is a really solid pocket of time to tell your story in. Wrap it up, get it done. Give us one last amazing season, and we can remember this show fondly for all eternity at that point. Hopefully that's the case, because you find that real sweet spot, and you can land. If you can stick the landing in the end of your story, you'll be remembered forever. Or you wind up going 1 or 2 seasons too far, and you become like Game of Thrones, which I hate continuously using that as an example, because it's still legitimately one of my favorite shows ever, but notorious for a very bad ending and a really weak finish. So don't put yourself in that situation, because it's so popular you can't imagine trying to squeeze a couple extra pennies while you're sacrificing good creative storytelling in the process. So I hope that's not the case.
And one story that we've been waiting for so long to be done and ready is the Batman Part 2. Feels like Matt Reeves has been working on it for 15 years now. It's been quite a long time, but he's wanted to perfect it. He's wanted to get this story right. We've had Colin Farrell talking greatly about what it looks like, calling it brilliant, and that he is really ready to get back into that world. But we got a few announcements of things coming for the Batman Part 2, because they're ramping up to finally start filming early next year. I think around April of next year is when it's supposed to start. But it seems like Zoe Kravitz, Catwoman, is not going to be returning for the Batman Part 2. We don't know if maybe she'll get a little nod or something here. It makes sense because of how they left it, but you always hate, especially when you're trying to establish a big world and it's been so long between the first two, that you take a character that you did well with, but there's, of course, so much more that you can do with Selena Kyle and Catwoman's character that she may not appear at all in here. And it's maybe not as related to it, but Scarlett Johansson is in talks to join the cast. So apparently Emma Stone was first offered this role. She turned it down, and Scarlett Johansson sent her team after it. It's going to be really interesting to see what she does in DC. She's like the real biggest first name from the MCU, of course, where her status stands in the MCU right now, but she's one of the first big names of the main cast to join the DCU, or join DC.
Right, and you still don't know what she's going to do. We have our theories. People tend to start the rumor mill automatically when you hear a name that big, like, oh, what role do they have for her? Is she going to play a big role, or is she going to play a minor role? Like, there's talks of her doing everything from being potentially Mr. Freeze's wife, which is a very minor bit part in it based on the overall story, but they could dive a little bit more into that, into her backstory here to create that, because you and I both talk, and we think that Mr. Freeze would be amazing in a darker setting.
Incredible in this world.
Give us something better than that god-awful Arnold Schwarzenegger performance from Batman and Robin, but there's also talk of her playing Andrea Beaumont, which is one of my favorite characters in any Batman property we've gotten. I have a poster of Mask of the Phantasm in my music room. It's one of my favorite animated films ever. It's very in love with how much I love Batman the Animated Series. It was the movie they made. Mask of the Phantasm is absolutely brilliant, and it would be really cool if she got to play that role as well, because they could have a lot of fun in that kind of darker setting too, going with the Phantasm route and kind of the supernatural elements and stuff with that if they really wanted to. So a lot of meat on the bone here for whatever they're going to decide to do with the second film, that it feels like we've been waiting 875 years for this film to come out. It feels like it was like the first film ever made now. We've gotten so much since then, but yeah, I'm excited to see them dive back in and see what they do here.
Yeah, and a live-action Mask of the Phantasm would be pretty incredible. I don't know if that storyline fully fits in with where the Batman left off, because he's still supposed to be younger, and we know that Andrea Beaumont was an ex of Bruce's, and it's supposed to be a little bit older in that storyline and stuff. But yeah, we went to the anniversary screening of what they did, a 4K restoration of it, and we went to theaters to watch Mask of the Phantasm, which was great. That would be fantastic. But there's so many strong, good women in the Batman universe, villains and heroes and all that. You really don't know who could she potentially be in that, because you could throw out, and they could recast so many different things. You think maybe Barbara Gordon, but you wondering how that would play in with what they've set up with Jim Gordon and that, and the actors, differences in there. And you also have Harley Quinn. I couldn't see them doing an older Harley Quinn with Scarlett. I mean, there's only like a 2-year difference between Robert Pattinson and Scarlett, even though they're supposed to be, Robert's supposed to be playing a younger, Batman, but he's about to turn 40 himself in there. So it's really interesting to see how they pick that up and like how long it's supposed to be, because what was a Penguin just a couple weeks after the Batman, and I don't think this is supposed to be very long after the Batman Part 1. So it is really going to be interesting to see where they go. Yeah, as you mentioned, I would love to see a darker, more dramatic Mr. Freeze done, but there's been rumors of Hush and the Court of Owls and all that, and they're keeping the story under wraps, but I'm really curious to see just who they get, because we know in the not main DCU that the Batman is supposed to be remaining in. We also have the Clayface movie coming out. So you doubt that they're going to do anything that's related to that unless there's a wink and a nod or something to it. You have James Gunn developing The Brave and the Bold, but you don't know exactly how that's going to fit in and work in. And those Batman are going to be separate, but you got to be looking. Like, you can't have a villain or characters in the Batman that you're also going to use in The Brave and the Bold in a different way, because it's just going to feel like, okay, we just retreaded and redid what Matt Reeves did, because, the Batman Part 2 is going to be out before the first DC, James Gunn's DC Batman comes out. So you got to know that there's been a lot of talking and trying to figure out what's in there. I just hope he wasn't like handicapped at all on what he could do or use when it came to the Batman, because, of course, he started that before James Gunn took over, and they're still trying to continue it on its own. But we also got fans clamoring to bring Robert Pattinson into the DC universe as Batman and not have it separate. But you've also now got, with the story we're about to talk about, Netflix potentially buying and being the rights owner to DC from the Warner Brothers merger. You've got fans calling for Henry Cavill to come back as Superman and kind of reset the DC, James Gunn DC universe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of balls in the air. Like I've been very vocal in my desire to have a live action Hush version in there. That would be incredible too, but we'll see what happens with the Batman Part 2. I'm excited to see that it's finally getting close to being started to production, and we'll start to have a little more clarity in 2026 as far as what they're going to do with that. But let's go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid off here and get to our last story before we get to our reviews. And we have to talk about the gigantic $82.7 billion elephant in the room, which is Netflix announcing that they're purchasing Warner Brothers officially. And, we've talked ad nauseum so much about these companies pulling their resources together and just creating this big conglomeration. And what's that going to look like? Well, this is about as big a one as you can talk about when you have Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers. And that includes all of their properties, with maybe the exception of Discovery that might break off and do its own thing. But you get Netflix now owning the rights to HBO Max, all of the catalog of the Warner Brothers film division, Warner Brothers gaming division, even. You're getting into some really deep, serious things, and you have to wonder where that's going to leave literally everything in an absolutely game-changing, entertainment-shifting deal that is going to be a big, hot mess.
Yeah, you feel like you want to just be done talking about it and let it see how it goes, but this is a monumental thing for the movie and TV industry, because Netflix has been the forefront of trying to change the industry, of that they feel theatrical releases are kind of outdated. And they kind of already touched on it a little bit here, that they're still going to have theatrical releases for the Warner Brothers properties, but they feel the current status and way that they do it is just not working. It's not what the consumer wants. Speaking for every single consumer, saying that they don't want a 45-day window in theaters. They want it at home where they can watch it right away and stuff. So you feel like maybe they're going to try to cut the theatrical window down from 1 to 2 weeks or something like that. We've seen them do the limited runs with K-pop, and we got the Stranger Things finale, and you have, was it Red One got a small, but I think that was most of them are either 1 week or 2 weeks. They're not giving a whole lot to theater, so this is a big concern for a lot. We have the Directors Guild and the Writers Guild and Teamsters, and a lot of them speaking out about it because they don't know what this means for directors, for the theaters. You've got, this could be really damaging to those like us who love to go to the theaters, because you're talking about the DC universe, which how big comic books has, even though it's kind of fallen off a little bit lately. But you've got the Harry Potter series, whether they stick to keeping the TV series that just started filming, or they go back to wanting to reboot that into films and putting those on Netflix instead of going out. And, it's also disruptive because they don't want all of the channels, all the networks that they have. They're just kind of basically taking the properties they want, and we have no idea where the rest of it lies.
Yeah, it's a gigantic mess, and it's still got to sort itself out. There's still a lot of legal things that they have to clear through. Some of this stuff's not going to be final until late next year. There's a whole big mess of stuff that's coming out of it, and it's a little disheartening because of a couple things. It's an interesting financial study, how Netflix has this much capital to invest in a company like that. If you're trying to kill the theatrical nature of these films, where are you making enough money to recoup these things if you're investing? And this is where I start to worry, how are you going to be investing into your films to make any kind of money? Because you hear about some of these massive losses that they've taken on things that are like 300, like a couple $100 million was put into this project and it was only released on Netflix. How did you recoup any of that money? And now you're going to have your hands on so many IPs. It kind of makes you wonder, like, yeah, okay, there's a large chunk of people that are willing to wait until a film comes out on streaming to watch it, if it's not one they want to rush out. But you still see so many instances of films being successful in the theaters because people still value that experience.
There's Zootopia 2, the biggest
Perfect
example of just how globally it has just been killing it in the box office.
Yeah, like for stuff like that, it's going to still, there's still an audience for those types of things. And you're trying to kill that off completely. You're really just cutting off a revenue source for you. Like this is, it makes zero sense for me, but we're not the ones looking at the particular financials. Apparently somehow they've gotten a couple $100 billion to, you know, be able to feel comfortable throwing 82 of it towards this deal. And you're just wondering where all of it's going to wind up, because the way that it makes it sound, like some of the info that's come out of it is they're not going to completely shutter HBO Max right away. It's still going to be around for a while, but it does open the possibility of them having those properties on your service. And I'm guessing the business thinking is, well, if I got HBO Max for something like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, if I can get that on Netflix now instead of having to pay for HBO Max, I'm just going to cancel HBO Max and go with Netflix, because that's where all the properties are that I want to watch. And I'm sure that's what their line of thinking is, but at the same time, like, what are we doing? Like, where are we winding up with all of this? And it's so disheartening. Like you said, this is going to affect so many people in an already stretched thin entertainment industry where so many people are struggling to find any type of consistent work. You're limiting that even more. There's less opportunities for people to work, potentially. Well, you know what happens with these mergers. They put their people in places and they lay off a bunch of other people. Like, it's what happens when you have these corporate takeovers all the time. And that's disheartening for so many people. And it's just like, where are they going to work? What are they going to do? Like, what's gonna come out of this? How are we going to get on the other side of it positively for everybody? I don't know. The jury's still out on that.
Yeah, not even with film, but the TV side of the properties that they're going to be bringing over, but their production, because it is pretty well known that Netflix hasn't given that many series very long runs. Most of them are 3 to 5 seasons if they get that, before they're done. Like most of them, even like our beloved Netflix Marvel series, got 2 to 3 seasons and that was it. And you know, we got Stranger Things ending with 5, even that does feel a little more naturally ending instead of being forced to go out. But it's going to be a huge shakeup. But you've also got on the other side, you know, Paramount and Skydance merged just last year or earlier this year, and they have been extremely aggressive about wanting all the Warner Brothers properties, and they want everything. They want the networks, they want all that, but they're owned by one of the richest families in the world, and you worry and you struggle about what that would mean if they got in. And they're even announced that they're trying for a hostile takeover. They're not taking, you know, Netflix being chosen as the winner to get an exclusive deal laying down. They want to do a hostile takeover, which is kind of going to the stakeholders, offering this and trying to kind of go behind the back of the deal and get something done. But it's kind of which is the lesser of the two evils, because you have a huge, gigantic network now of Paramount and everything they own. Them owning Warner Brothers would feel like to be an antitrust type of issue, but Netflix as well owning Warner Brothers feels like it falls in that same, like one is potentially trying to kill the theatrical experience, but the other side is killing a lot of stuff. Since they've owned Paramount, they're canceling a lot of movies and projects. They're just, and it feels like too aggressively going after this. Like, I get if you want some properties, but they're writing letters to congressmen and they're talking about hostile takeovers, and they're just saying a lot of stuff that just feels like it's, I didn't get my way, so I'm going to take it, whether you like it or not. And it just feels like a humongous mess that is really going to have either way. If Paramount somehow is able to do the hostile takeover something, it feels like something that's going to really reshape and change the industry, because we saw kind of what happened when Disney bought Fox, of how much of Fox's film production and stuff like that is, it's 25% of it what it used to be. What happens with Paramount takes over or with Netflix takes over, we're not going to get as many theatrical films when Netflix has, or you have it for a week or two. And at that point, as we saw with COVID, when you couldn't go to the theaters and they were instantly putting stuff out, it hurt a lot of films, and it hurt the business greatly. And it still really hasn't fully recovered from what COVID did, and Netflix is kind of trying to capitalize on that. Okay, well, theaters are still struggling. Let's just kind of kill them off. And you hate this. As much as we complain about people talking and the prices and everything else, we still love the theatrical experience. As much as you can have a great TV and sound system at home, there's still nothing that compares to going in a theater to see something, because 99% of us can never get a screen as big as that you can get a movie theater, as nice of a sound system as you can get a movie theater. But this is one that's really, whichever way it goes, and it could be late 2026, even to 2027 before anything really ever happens. That's why it kind of made me just scratch my head a little bit that Netflix already announced it. They sent out an email, press releases, everything, announcing they're buying them, but like, the Discovery stuff has to split off before this is done, and that's said to be Q3 of 2026. You have all the regulatory and antitrust and approvals that it has to go through. You're almost 2 years away, almost 1 to 2 years away before this could potentially ever even be done, and you're already announcing it like, hey, yeah, we got this all. It's weird. I know we've talked about it a ton, but this is something that could really reshape the entertainment industry.
It's a big deal, and it's very unfortunate because, you know, like you said, we're all for people having work and people doing things. And also, we obviously, being fans of film, we want to protect that film going experience as well. And who knows how it's all going to shake out, but hopefully, you know, they reach some kind of resolution, and hopefully smarter heads prevail when all is said and done. But it's still a very messy process that they have to get through to get this across the finish line. So we'll see what happens. We got a little bit of ways before anything could be officially official and formal, but we'll see where it all shakes out. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.